Hey everyone, Larry here, and welcome back to Haye's Review. Let's talk the state of DC. So, just to give you a little back history, I am an avid DC Comics fan. Went to several Comic Cons, dressed up as some of the characters. Growing up, I did watch, the Batman the Animated Series, Batman and Robin Animated Series, the New Adventures of Batman and Robin Animated Series, Static Shock, Superman the Animated Series, Batman and Superman Animated Series, Batman Beyond, Justice League Unlimited. So grew up with those cartoons as really some of my foundation and base, in addition to reading various comics every now and again, to watching DC on the CW mainly, because that's where a lot of the shows were. So from everything from Arrow up and through Superman and Lois and Stargirl, HBO Max, we had Doom Patrol, Titans, but even pre-CW era of DC, I am and will always be an avid Smallville fan. Started that show when I was 8, finished it when I was 18, so I've always loved DC. Taking it a bit further, a few years later, hitting the movie verses and stuff, the DCEU, there were things I liked, there were things I did not like, there were things that didn't necessarily make sense to me at the time. We had everything that went on with the Justice League when that first came out, and then we had the DC Fandome. So DC Fandome of summer 2020, then we had DC Fandome again in fall of 21, and that kind of gave us an idea and showed a slate of things upcoming in DC moving forward. That was where they first talked about the Snyder Cut, and here was my reaction to watching the true Snyder Cut trailer. Alright, this is fresh, this is raw. Like, me just watching that trailer, finally, I think we're about to see the DC characters get respect on their name. Oh my god. Like, I can't. It looks like a whole different movie. Yeah, so I loved it. So, present day, there's some changes going on with DC. They're about to rebrand a little bit and really start being known as DC Studios in regard to, its production moving forward. I don't know necessarily how I feel about the direction that it may go. I really do want to be pleasantly surprised. So, lucky me, James Gunn released a little bit of a sneak peek preview upon what he and people on his team are looking to do moving forward in regard to DC. So I'm gonna check it out and let you know my thoughts on each of the different projects that he's covering.
Hey everybody, I'm James Gunn. I'm the
co-CEO of DC Studios.
So as many of you know, DC has been disconnected in film and television for a long time. And
It's been disconnected.
Our jobs, mine and Peter's, is to come in and make sure the DCU
Okay,
is connected.
so, he's immediately talking about the DCU needing to be connected, which is true. But I think the only way you could truly do that is, especially at the state of it right now, is a true refresh, a true restart to connect everything. You have to have the appropriate groundwork. So here's hoping this is what he's going to tell us.
Vision, gaming, and animation. That the characters are consistent, played by the same actors, and it works within one story. And if something is outside of that, like Matt Reeves' Batman or Todd Phillips' Joker or Teen Titans Go, that it is clearly labeled as DC Elseworlds, outside of the mainstream.
Okay, so, oh boy. So it's interesting hearing him talking here about things outside of his main DC studios as Elseworld when this was literally said 3 years ago now at DC Fandom of 2020.
Change up the mythology and the pantheon of characters to better reflect the true diversity and inclusivity that our audiences want and that our audiences live in.
Where they start talking about multiversal stuff and Elseworlds and kind of the vibe that DC was doing the whole time of we're going to have multiple versions of different characters. We want the directors to have the creative ability to do what they want with the characters. Hence, we have the first Suicide Squad, which people don't or call really the Ayer cut. We definitely don't want to see that. But it's interesting hearing it brought up now as like Elseworld, where that's essentially what was said 3 years ago.
Now, Peter and I have gotten pretty lucky in terms of the 4 projects that are coming out over the next year. First, we have Shazam: Fury of the Gods.
All right, 4 projects.
Kind of in his own part of the DCU, so he connects very well.
Right. So we're talking about Shazam being on his own part of the DCU, which I agree with to an extent. I think, this is gonna have spoilers. So if you haven't seen any of these projects, skip around. But yeah, Shazam, I think, yes, it's always been in its own part, but it's still in many ways still tied into Black Adam. It's still tied in many ways to Henry Cavill, Man of Steel, even though we did not see Henry Cavill's face on the body of Superman at the end of Shazam 1.
Into the Flash, a fantastic movie that I really love, that resets the entire DC universe.
I mean, the Flash trailer looked good. Alright, so he's saying here that the Flash is going to reset, so they're utilizing that to reset the direction, or as people will start calling it, the Gunverse.
The Blue Beetle, fantastic film about...
I don't know about Blue Beetle. Especially after watching Young Justice, it's going to be hard to see Blue Beetle. Alright, Aquaman 2, let's see.
Very talented writers have started to map out an 8 to 10 year plan of what DC Studios will be in film, television, and game. This first chapter is called Gods and Monsters.
Gods and Monsters, ironically the name of the animated movie, but that's okay. Let's see. Creature Commandos.
I've written all the episodes. Something we're going to do that's a little bit different at DC is we're going to have characters move into animation, out of animation, usually having the same actor play their voice as who plays them in life.
Alright, so with Creature Commandos, one of those characters looks like either Blight or El Diablo. I don't know who they are. The amphibian aqua character almost looks like Abe from Hellboy. We have 2 Frankenstein looking things, and that almost looked like the ferret or the weasel from Suicide Squad 2 in there.
Project up is Waller. This is a story about
Alright, Waller.
By Viola Davis. Viola Davis is going to team up with members of Team Peacemaker. And this is
members of Team Peacemaker. Okay, so we're not...
And Jeremy Carver, who created the Doom Patrol. It is a fantastic story that's out of this world, and I can't wait for people to see it. Up is the big one, the true beginning of the DCU. This is called Superman Legacy. This is being written by me. I'm in the middle of it. I'm having a great time.
Superman Legacy.
Superman will be released into theaters July 11th, 2025.
Alright, that really didn't tell me anything about it.
This thing is a big premiere HBO television series called
Lanterns.
It's a story of a couple of Green Lanterns, John Stewart and Hal Jordan, and we have a few other lanterns peppered in there, but this is really a terrestrial-based TV show.
True Detectives, okay.
With a couple of Green Lanterns who are space cops watching over Precinct Earth. In it, they discover a terrifying mystery that ties into our larger story.
All right, so let me just stop it right here with lanterns. So this is not new. Back when DC, I guess, was still doing its whole separate DC Universe platform, which had, you know, merchandise stores, it had comics you could read. That at the time is where Titans, Doom Patrol, Swamp Thing, those shows were on that platform. They when they were first talking about, you know, DC content going to HBO Max, that was one of the first shows they were talking about. That it was going to be a cop-like show, just intergalactic with space lanterns. There'd be various lanterns on it. That's not new. So it's like, it's finally being made because, you know, if you've been watching things DC for a while, you'll know that a lot of these projects have been, I guess, really in, you know, in development as HBO Max, as they would say. So, I mean, cool. I mean, have Jon Stewart, like, you know, they were talking initially, it'd be Jon Stewart, it'd be Guy Gardner, whatever. They have so many different lanterns to choose from, but that was one of the first big things they announced coming to HBO Max to try to, you know, pull many of the DC fans to that service. Like, it was that show and several other shows that they first were talking about, like just a Justice League Dark, but it never materialized, so that's not new.
Next is a big movie called The Authority.
All right, The Authority.
Is a passion project of mine. It's based on the marvelous Wildstorm characters we are now bringing into the DC.
I don't really know too much about them.
All of our primary DC characters. The Authority are a group of superheroes who think the world is broken.
Okay.
They want to fix it by any means.
Fixing the world, it's broken.
At superheroes.
All right, so we have The Authority now. Don't really know too much about them, but we kind of have now two ensemble groups of heroes, so, or superpowered beings, metas, if you want to call them that. So we have Creature Commandos, now we have The Authority. From what this is sounding like to me, The Authority could be very much on the scale of The Boys. And just in terms of, I think it sounds like it'll be more of like superpowered people in, you know, how they would work and function in society. Just in terms of the world is broken and they're gonna fix it. But I also get kind of Superman versus the Elites vibes, if you've seen that animated movie. But let's continue. So this is now two different ensemble cast groups. So where does his Suicide Squad fit in here?
We're doing a television series called Paradise Lost. Paradise Lost is the story of Paradise.
Paradise Lost.
Themyscira, which is the birthplace of Wonder Woman. It's almost like Game of
Right,
Thrones.
Themyscira with the Amazons,
With all of the inhabitants.
Game of Thrones.
The-
All right, so when we come to Paradise Lost as a show, again, that is not new. Several years ago, I want to say, if not right after Wonder Woman 1, you know, they had talked about doing a spin-off show called The Amazons because the reception of them was so high coming out of, I believe it was Wonder Woman or maybe even the Justice League when that first came out. Although the Amazon scenes were amazing in the Snyder Cut, more particularly, but they talked about wanting to do an Amazons show, Game of Thrones-y style, so hearing it here again, it's the same.
Introduction of the DCU's Batman is The Brave and the Bold. The Brave and the Bold is the story of
Batman, Brave and the Bold.
son, Damian
So in the
Wayne.
animated show, that was Batman and Blue Beetle.
Comic book run. Damian Wayne is my favorite Robin.
Damien.
Assassin who Batman tries to get in line, and so this is the story of the two of them and the beginning of sort of the Bat family.
Oh boy. Okay. So, as he already shared, Matt Reeves' Batman, the Robert Pattinson Batman, is going to be now coined into Elseworld territory. I don't see how you can do a Batman, especially when you have Damian Wayne being the Robin. I know Damian eventually, like, the dynamic is there, but in many regards, there were a lot of lessons learned from, Dick Grayson to Jason Todd to Barbara Gordon to all the different people he had in between, Tim Drake. Then we hit Damian. So I feel this will open up some questions of like, do all those other Robins exist? Like, is there a Nightwing? Like, how can all these, how can we be at Damian and what about everyone else? Unless this is just, it's Batman and his son and there was none of that in between. But who knows? Maybe I'll be surprised.
Up is a TV series called Booster Gold. Booster Gold is one of
Booster Gold.
popular cult heroes. He is a fascinating guy. He's a loser from the future who uses
A loser from the future.
to come back to present day and become a superhero so that people will love him. It is basically the superhero story of imposter syndrome on an HBO Max series. One of my
Okay, imposter syndrome. Okay, Booster Gold. Who cares about that character? Like, whatever. I can easily see this be the attempt of trying to make Booster Gold kind of the fourth wall breaking character, a Deadpool-y kind of character, because in many regards he knows everything that in theory happened since he's from the future and he's come back to the past to be a hero. So I can easily see that as their attempt of a fourth wall character. So kind of what they tried to do or hope that Harley Quinn could be. But
favorite comic book series from last year was Tom King's run on Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. And so we're going to turn that into a big science fiction epic film. Now,
Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
a guy who was sent to Earth and raised by loving parents, whereas Supergirl in this story, she is a character who was raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way. So she's a much more jaded character.
All right, so okay, so Supergirl, I've seen different versions of that. Obviously, there was Supergirl on Smallville. Then we had the Supergirl CW show. More recently, we have Supergirl out of the Flash movie. I think that one could be interesting, but I guess what is the long-term goal for this? Because I feel like from what the trailer kind of showed, where it seemed, again, spoilers, and the trailer I'm talking about is from The Flash, where we saw a little bit of that Kara. But it seemed like, they were pulling a lot from, Val Zod's story of, I think it was Earth 2 Superman, but Val Zod, or Flashpoint version where, they were hidden away and they're coming to terms with their ability. But I don't know. I don't know how I feel about it. It'll be interesting to see who and the direction they go with Supergirl, especially because we're being introduced to one out of the Flash movie. But I know he said it's a reset, so that might just wipe away that character. But I like the way Sasha Kaye looked during her fighting scenes and flying. But hey, we'll see what happens.
And that brings me to Swamp Thing, the last thing we're going to talk about. A very dark horror story in the origins.
Swamp Thing.
Who is Swamp Thing. And
Dark horror story, Swamp Thing.
The rest of the DCU, it will still feed into the rest of the stories. Anyway, those are the...
Okay, so that's it for Swamp Thing. So again, Swamp Thing, okay. So back when DC Universe, the old service again, was launching, Swamp Thing was one of those shows. before the first episode of Swamp Thing came out, DC made an announcement that we're canceling Swamp Thing. So I know a lot of people did not watch Swamp Thing. I would highly recommend you check out the show. I watched it. It was about, I think, like 10 episodes. But I enjoyed it. You know, really gave a lot in terms of the depth of the character, the tragedy of the character. Gave some awesome reveals of some other characters that I wasn't expecting, such as, you know, Blue Devil, the Floronic Man. But I would highly recommend that you check that out. So I'll be curious to see the differences between James Gunn's Swamp Thing versus the DC Universe CW Swamp Thing. You could watch Swamp Thing on the CW app.
Those are the stories that I can tell you about right now. I've loved the DC characters since I was a child. They're incredibly important to me. I knew that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to do something very different. One of the things that's very important for me in all of these movies and TV series is that the director's vision and the vision of the writers and all of the creators is unique and something special. Storytelling
Unique,
is
something
always
special.
all that matters to us. And I want to be true to those stories. I want to be true to you guys and really give you something different than you've ever seen before. Anyway, thank you, everybody. I appreciate you watching. I hope this was exciting for you because it's really exciting for me. And I can't wait to start to dive into these stories with you guys on this grand adventure. Thank you so much.
All right. So let's hit my final thoughts. You know, I think it was cool to hear and see what is planned moving forward when it comes to DC Studios. Again, it's hard to really take this as being fresh and being new when, you know, there's things that were announced like 3 years ago. Like I shared, the Green Lantern show was announced 3 years ago. You know, in development. We had the Blue Beetle one that was in development for a while, but now it's bumped up to a movie. Paradise Lost, aka the Amazon's in development show. So, you know, we're hearing all these things of, or at least for me, I'm connecting things that I've been aware about for a while since DC was first shifting to HBO Max. And, you know, I would have liked it a lot if they had done a full reboot, like completely wipe it all, have nobody continue, and just really start it afresh and start it new. And maybe that's what will happen. I want to be surprised. I know how I'm probably sounding like, oh, you know, I don't like it. Don't get me wrong, I do. I think the importance of being a fan of something is that you could like things about it and you could not like things about it. You don't have to blind like everything that's presented to you. You can have a differing opinion. You could disagree with me. We could agree. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. But I think if they had done a clean wipe of all of it, I think I would be way more on board than I am right now. I want to be pleasantly surprised. I want to love it. Like I shared, I love DC. So I'm really looking forward to see what comes next with all of this. Something that was missing for me with this too is some deeper visuals. I think a lot of it was, here's a comic page, here's a graphic, XYZ, but like didn't come in with like the logos. So I will attach at the end of this video a logo that was made by a YouTuber, and I'll put their channel in the description so you could check that out. So you could just see, you know, visually the different logos that are being used. Or that they made up for the projects coming forward, but it just didn't have that kind of like bam and wow factor. But I understand the necessary parts of setting the basis and building different structures moving forward and building that foundation to eventually lead to some of those larger teams, like a Justice League. But just hearing some of these projects again, I was like, that's not necessarily new, but like I said, I'd love to be pleasantly surprised. Let me know what you thought about James Gunn and what he announced here for DC. What projects are you most excited? What projects are you most excited about, and what do you want to see from DC Studios moving forward? I just want it to be something good. I want them to spend the time to make everything, and I just want to like it. So here's hoping that's what happens. But thanks for watching with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.